So I think we have to start with what these protests are about in general. So a lot of people participating in these protests will say it's about our freedom, our rights. You're impeding on our civil liberties, so to speak. But in actuality, I believe that they're protesting their own safety. Unfortunately, the way that our political system is set up, we don't really have someone in charge that is saying we need to do a complete country lockdown, as we've seen in other countries. So there have been leaders in other countries that have said this is a virus that we all need to come together to combat. And one way that we can do that is by shutting down businesses, shutting down things that are considered non-essential. Now, of course, that comes with it comes with job loss. It comes with a lot of difficulties that individuals are facing. But one of the things that I think a lot of people are seeing is that, these individuals that are protesting, a lot of them also are very heavily concealed with sometimes assault rifles or firearms. Usually you will also see a high correlation of Trump supporters as well, individuals that are encouraging his bid for 2020. But it's it's a step back, the protests. These would not be in place if it were not for the greater good of the community, the greater good of society. I think they overlap in some of their values and their viewpoints. I feel like if we were to do extensive, in-depth characterizations of these individuals and learning more about them, they probably would share similar political stances in some regards. But if you think about it, ultimately, it comes down to, I think, an individualistic right. So vaccines, it goes back to this notion of herd immunity. Why do we get the MMR vaccine? Why do we get these other vaccines? To protect not only ourselves, but also to protect others. Why are we being asked to, what some people say, social distance or physically distance or safely distance? Again, this goes back to herd immunity. We are protecting ourselves, but also protecting others, especially from these things that we cannot physically see. And so I think the commonality between anti-vaxxers and individuals protesting coronavirus all boils down to what they believe is their individualistic right. I think with the protest, you see a lot of individuals with extreme viewpoints kind of coming ahead to protest these lockdowns. So you will see a lot of people that are typically, if we had to run some sort of just statistics on the crowds, you'll see a lot of people that are probably extreme right-wing individuals, which, based on some of the research I've done looking at anti-vax attitudes, individuals who identify as Republican, and especially these more extreme cases, do tend to also have anti-vaccine beliefs. When you think about what's the best course of action to correct for the misinformation that they believe, unfortunately, I feel like for a lot of these protesters, what happens is the information we get goes through echo chambers. So typically, if you think about your Facebook group, the friends that you have on Facebook and other social media platforms, 9 times out of 10, these individuals are very like-minded or share some of the same values and same beliefs that you also share. Now, for these protesters, if we think, we have our own echo chambers and filter bubbles in which that we generate information, these individuals do as well. And unfortunately, once individuals adhere to information, it's extremely hard to correct it. As far as what we can do to combat the information, unfortunately, we just have to instill in science. But these individuals that are at protests typically will support Donald Trump. And what we see is that the president is not very science-driven himself. So if we combat these individuals who are anti-science with science, there's not really much that we can go from there as far as changing their mind.